Hello everybody, I am here to show you the Kahoot system. Getkahoot.com is the website that you want to be at. It's easy and free to sign up. A lot of people have been asking me about the sign-in process, and I actually do have two accounts. I have a personal one that I put questions on with answers, etc., and then I have one for the students. The one I set up for the students, I just set up under my personal email um, because I just wanted to use that. My other one was already taken by my work email, and their password is just student. Once they sign in, they can either create a new quiz, discussion, or survey, or actually look at the Kahoots that they've already built. Notice that in the upper right hand corner, they have a username. If your students want to create their own account and then search for each other's usernames, that would be perfectly acceptable for them to do. As you make a quiz, as we'll find out, you can make it either public or private. If you choose to set up an account for yourself and make all of your quizzes private, then even if someone searches for your username, they will not be able to see the quizzes you've created. So that's a way to keep your classroom kind of closed. These are the ones that my students have created. Exam reviews, as I've told you guys in my presentation, this is how I had the students answering it, and you can see 51 questions. Some had more than others, how many plays there were, how many people favorited it, etc., etc. So if we need to go create a new Kahoot, we just go to the new Kahoot button up at the top, and let's say we want to use a quiz. That's personally my favorite way of using Kahoot, but as you can see, there are other ways. In your quiz, the first thing you're going to do is title it. So a title, you can put a description of it like, this is for exam number 1 review. And who are you showing it to? Only yourself or private, or is it searchable by everyone if they put in your username, or can anybody pull it up and see it? Another important thing, they do have several different languages, which is a new thing. But another important thing is what audience are you targeting? If you are just at a general school or a university or business, it's another way for people to search for your particular quiz if you choose to make it public. If you choose to make it private, the audience really doesn't matter. I typically use school or university. You can put a video, you can put some resources, etc., etc. So once you're done, you can add an image, etc. You can just continue on from there. So here's your question. There are only so many characters you can put in. 95 characters is your limit. You can make it bold, italicized, supertext, superscript, subscript, symbols, etc. So let's say, how many drug schedules are there in the Controlled Substance Act? Here's where Kahoot gets a little tricky. Because you are limited by the number of characters that you can type into the question and answers, a lot of times you end up having to abbreviate questions or answering in simple terms. So use Kahoot as you can in your classroom or as a means of a review for your students, but it really takes some critical evaluation of the answers and questions that you're trying to get across. So that might be a discussion that you could have with your students about how to think about how they can ask a question if they want to quiz each other, etc. So time seconds to answer, this is the clock that ticks down. I generally leave it, the default is 20 seconds. If it's a math-based question, I tend to give them 120 seconds to answer, but generally it defaults to 20. The answer, you put in all your answers for, that should be 4, 3, and 2, and you're going to check which one is correct. Again, you can add an image, you can resource where your answer came from, etc., etc. Once you are satisfied with this particular question, you hit the next button. You can either add a question or complete it from here. Once you feel like you're done and you just keep adding questions, you hit save. You can either continue editing it, preview it, play it, or share it. The share it creates a link on Kahoot.it, which is the website that you use to play it. So this would be a good way to share it with your class. You can play by yourself, or your students can play by themselves, or you can have them play against a big screen like I showed you guys at the conference, etc., etc. Another interesting thing, the game options down here. Let's say when you created your Kahoot up here and you've edited it and there's 50 questions, which, by the way, I don't believe it limits you on number of questions. I haven't tested that theory though, so don't quote me on that. I believe my max is generally 100, and that's because it becomes cumbersome after that to be a quiz. Keep it short, and it tends to draw students in a little better. But anyway, let's say you created it and you wanted it to be randomized so that they just didn't memorize the answer to all the questions. You can randomize the order of questions and the order of answers. That really benefits you as the writer of the test if you want to write the test, because in my particular exams, when I'm editing a question, I always like to make the right answer A. So if I don't have this particular question selected, then I'd have to sit here and say, okay, the first one was A, the second one was D, and you want to make sure they're random. So if you do not have this toggle selected, it's going to always put your answer what you always put it as. The display game pin throughout, this is if you have a student that has a hard time connecting to the internet, or maybe comes in late and you still want them to play. It shows the number that they used to sign up for that particular quiz at the bottom of the quiz for the whole time you're playing. Minimized instructions you can turn on or off. Personally, I leave that off. Automatically move through questions. This means that when everybody who is logged in, let's say you have 10 players, when all 10 people have given their answer, if it is a 20-second question and it takes them 20 seconds, then it's going to move on because of the time limit. However, if all 10 of them answer and it only takes them 5 seconds, then it's not going to sit there and make you wait the other 15 seconds. It's going to move on to the next question and tell you who got it right, etc., etc. Once you play, once you end up playing and the people join, at the very end it gives you, and it has this fun little music too. I'm going to close this out. Once you play at the very end, it gives you the option to download the answers. And what that does to benefit you is you can actually see by player who answered what question correctly, who answered it incorrectly, what answer they chose, etc., etc. That's taking assessment to a whole new level. It comes up on an Excel spreadsheet, and it's very easy to view. And most students don't feel comfortable, of course, letting everyone see their grades. So what I like to do to avoid a little bit of discouragement or embarrassment at certain questions that they got wrong, I'll assign students a number. So that way every time we play a Kahoot game, they have to play as their number, and that way I know that, okay, number 9 student got question 3, 5, and 19 wrong. I need to go in and sit there and go, what did he choose? How can I sit down and assess the student based on the questions that he got wrong? So there are multiple ways to use Kahoots, and you can even go and search public Kahoots. There are so many ones. They highlight ones at the beginning of every week, pretty much every day, it seems like, what's trending, what's popular, etc., etc. I encourage all of you to explore. If you feel that just having the one for your student is enough, then that's fine. But I do encourage instructors to create their own personal one that they can use that their students can't log into, because once you let the student have the login information, then they can edit any question that they choose, and that's where it becomes a little bit difficult as far as content review goes. So that's the gist of it. As you can see, this one in particular is public. This one's private. I don't know why a couple of them are private. But even if you guys were to go in and search, I'm a student at San Jac, that username, that is what my students use for their particular quiz titles. So I hope this has been informative for all of you, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.